Hello, I'm Novel Witt, and welcome to Morgen Talk. The early 20th century was an exciting time in America. With the mass production of cars, Americans flocked to the roads, traveling distant places. For Black Americans, however, that was a bit more of a challenge because this was during the Jim Crow period. Jim Crow were laws that were created during the late 19th century to early 20th century, and it was to enforce racial segregation by whites against blacks. Its primary purpose was to disenfranchise and remove political and economic gains made by blacks. My guest today is Dr. Christopher West, history professor at the Pasadena City College, who will share with us how blacks were able to successfully maneuver travel during this period with the help of a little-known guidebook. Hello, Dr. West. Thank you so much for talking with us today.
Good morning, and it is a pleasure to be here, and thank you for having me. It's an honor.
My pleasure. So tell me, for Black Americans during the Jim Crow era in Los Angeles, what was it like to travel through this area?
What it was like for Black folks to travel to Los Angeles is not very different for African Americans throughout the United States in terms of travel. They needed to find spaces that they felt safe in. They needed to find spaces where they could get gas. They needed to find spaces for hotel accommodations. They needed to find spaces where they could purchase goods and services. And when we talk about Jim Crow, what we're talking about is that generally in the United States of America, there were places that were segregated. In other words, sometimes there were signs, sometimes it was covert, but it was clear that because of the Black skin and the perception of Black skin within the United States, their business wasn't accepted. If I can, I'd like to transition because I teach the shtick is what I do.
Please, please.
I would like to show a little bit of a map to help viewers see and illustrate what I'm talking about. So what you're looking at is obviously a map of the United States of America, and you're looking at three different travel patterns. The dominant travel pattern in the early part of the 20th century is going to be primarily along the Eastern Seaboard. And then when we think about Los Angeles, as you can see here, which is a destination point, and I think that's the most critical element when you think about Los Angeles. For those African Americans who come to Los Angeles, they're looking for a different opportunity. It is what is called the River Jordan, which is crossing over to a different location to seek and experience opportunities in which they can have the space to be able to be themselves completely and enjoy the benefits of the United States and all that that means. What we see specifically in Los Angeles is that African Americans have the same entrepreneurial spirit that we see in other folks who are migrating to the city during the time period. And specifically, we can look at about the 1930s. I'm going to transition to a different site, and the site that I'm going to transition to is connected into what would be the equivalent of the Yellow Pages for those of us of a certain age. In the contemporary moment, it would be Yelp, which means if you are looking for a business and you're African American that you know that you could safely walk into, where would you go? And this is a graph of a location. And so this is from Central Avenue, which is a central location for business, residential, and commercial in Los Angeles. And as you can see, this is you can see the Rossmore Hotel, you can see the Regal Hotel. And so this would be a bound business directory where you could see that these are businesses that would be available to you. I'm going to go back a little bit, and this is going to then take you into a map, and I can provide you access to the map. This map, and so for your particular business, real estate, let's just go and click on real estate. And so when you click on real estate, what you're going to see is that on Central Avenue during this time period, and this is from 1931, there was another one produced in 1939, that you can see that there were a range of businesses that were available to African Americans, specifically in the Jim Crow era, that said, though your business may not be one that is desired by others, we are here and we are going to create businesses that we think are important for you. And so, for example, we're going to go, this is Central Avenue Loan and Jewelry. You can see the sort of range of businesses that are available on Central Avenue, conservatories of music, financial industries, travel, all these things are an indicator to me of that when African Americans move into Los Angeles, similarly as they move into Chicago, into Boston, into Denver, and to New York, that entrepreneurial spirit drove them, and it drove them to create businesses, enterprises, leisure spaces in which they could comfortably both spend their dollars and their resources, but more importantly, feel that they had the space to be completely human, to be completely accepted. And the businesses here, by offering advertisement in a book that is geared toward African Americans, made it clear not only do we want your business, we encourage you to come and patronize. And so it's a critically important piece that I think folks need to understand and know about.
Gotcha, got it. And that book you're referring to, was that the Green Book by chance?
So this is actually the Central Avenue Business Directory.
Uh-huh.
The Green Book, and this is, I just transitioned and switched to the New York Public Library, the Schoenberg Center. And this repository is a repository of all the Green Books that were produced. And a reminder what the Green Book is. Here is a man who was a postal service delivery, and he recognized that there needed to be a space for African Americans to have some information to travel comfortably. What started as a local book that was being offered primarily through Pullman porters. These were African American, primarily men who worked in railway transportation. They would offer this to African Americans who were moving into a new city or were planning on traveling and saying, if you are looking for a business that is going to be safe, here is a printed copy of a book that will tell you where those locations are. And that's the origin of the Green Book. As it emerges, that entrepreneurial spirit is going to generate a series of different books over the years. And it's clear from the Green Book that what they wanted to offer is we recognize that at this moment in American history, the ability for African Americans to travel comfortably is not there. And we are going to offer this as a business enterprise and as a service to our community to pull together business owners who are willing to support African American patrons and businesses, some owned by African Americans, some not owned by African Americans, that you could know safely and comfortably that you could walk into that business and be served with respect and with dignity. And bringing those two things together in many ways sort of typifies what the Green Book is, and why I think it still resonates into the contemporary moment.
And well, what do you think? What have we learned from that? That this was necessary for us to get through safely versus how we are today.
I think two things. I think one, I always emphasize when it comes to the Green Book, the entrepreneurial spirit of African Americans, which means that here's a man who saw Victor Green a moment of a window of a unmet need. And he stepped into that window of an unmet need and brought together businesses and patrons. What's more extraordinary than that? And I always want to emphasize to young folks is to think about it is there are opportunities throughout your world, throughout your day, throughout your experience in your communities in which there is a need that needs to be met. Place into yourself a sense of an entrepreneurial spirit and ask the question, what can I do here to try to create a moment in which I can transition and move away from a woe is me, this is what's happening in the world, to how can I make a difference? And I can make that difference because people who have been in Black skin in the United States of America have always moved into a space of how can I make a difference? And the Green Book is, to me, is a one of those examples of an individual who made a difference and made such a difference that we have preserved it, as you can see here at the New York Public Library. But the impact, that ripple of the Green Book meant that there were thousands of African American families who traveled comfortably because he had an idea. And that is a critical piece, entrepreneurial and idea, and then taking those two things together and making a difference. That to me is what matters about the Green Book.
Yes, that's absolutely amazing. One person can make a difference, right?
Yes, yes, they can. If they understand then what's possible and that they see the possibilities as opposed to seeing what is not possible. And that I think is something is a constant reminder and why the Green Book I think resonates into the contemporary moment. Yes.
You're correct. Well, thank you so much for sharing that with us.
Thank you. It's my honor. And